I was very excited to get the invitation for today. Now, the main thing I want to first figure out is, can I figure out how to get everything shared properly and so forth. So let me turn off my video and go back to sharing my PowerPoint with you. All righty, there we go. So I have been with the University of Arkansas for 13 years. I am the Associate Director of Assistive and Instructional Technology in the department that works with students with disabilities primarily. However, in that role, we have to work with faculty and staff across the campus community. Today's session, I have turned on the auto captioning. I think this is going to be a really good example of what auto captioning does and does not do well. So I'm hoping that it does fairly well for everybody. In general, my topics today relate to digital communications of some type and how we can form the habits to developing accessible content simply by changing how we do things. If you do things repetitively, I think it's 21 days in a row, it becomes a habit. And I think if we can each do that, we can produce accessible content without even thinking about it and not having to retrofit it for accommodations. I focused on the digital realm because it's becoming more and more the way that we communicate with one another, whether we're in an office surrounded by coworkers or, as many of us are doing now, working remotely. But before I dive in, there is one thing I want to make perfectly clear, and that is that digital is not the same as accessible. And this is a misnomer that so many people have, is that, well, it's digital, then it must be accessible. And as we go through the topics today, you'll very quickly understand why these two are not the same. So let's real quick talk about, before we start talking about the digital realm, let's talk about the human factor, the people that are actually impacted by inaccessibility. And this includes people who are deaf or hard of hearing, those who are blind or have low vision, deafblind or are colorblind. It also includes those who have motor-related disabilities, those who have dyslexia, maybe they have an auditory or visual processing disorder. And the groups that, examples of some that you may not have thought about don't necessarily include people with disability, but maybe somebody's language, their first language isn't English. Maybe someone is working in a noisy environment. Nowadays, somebody could be at home and they've got dog barking and kids crying, so it's a noisy environment. Or maybe they have slow internet speeds. That's one of the things that has really come up with both the work environments for people working remotely as well as students who are now at home, is not everybody has fast, high-speed internet. So these people can also be impacted by the inaccessibility. So some of the common barriers that exist in online and digital environments, or that are encountered, I should say. And I don't want to delve into each of these right now, because as we go through today, we're going to touch on these. But inaccessible documents, these might have poor heading structures. They may have images that don't have alt text, so somebody doesn't know what the image is. Inaccessible videos, which would include those that don't have captions, or maybe it's a video that is just visual, that doesn't have any audio component to it. Well, somebody who's blind or has low vision isn't going to get anything out of that video. Poor links, maybe they're non-descriptive. And then navigation that requires a mouse. All of these are common barriers that people encounter in the online and digital environments. So let's go to one of the primary sources that we all tend to use, and that's email communication. The first and foremost item I want to talk about is using meaningful subject lines. This can be a boon for accessibility, but just for users in general. Things like, don't use Zoom link, use, excuse me. Sorry about that. Use a subject line like Zoom link, Leadership Academy 2.0, which was the subject line that we were provided for our link. It was very helpful. A subject line like help isn't really helpful, but using assistance needed with presentation gives the user, the recipient, some idea of what that email is about. A subject line like registration doesn't mean a whole lot, but if it says ARC-AHEAD conference registration received, the recipient knows what to expect in that message. But using a meaningful subject line also is helpful to the recipient if they have to search for that email later. Provide a message and not just a graphic. And this entails those emails that we've all gotten. It's simply a flyer. That's the content. Unfortunately, that doesn't convey the message to all users. So the things that you can do is you can add an alternative text to the image. Microsoft Outlook and some of the other common email apps provide that option. Some of the apps also allow HTML coding to be edited so that description is there. Or include that text in the content of the email. You know, if it's a really long flyer, it is best to provide that text content in the email itself. And it could just be at the very end after the graphic. So let's start talking about some of the documents that we all typically use. I think probably Microsoft Word is one of the most common, but there are others. There's OpenOffice and LibreOffice that also have many of the tools that I'm going to talk about. So first and foremost, I want to start off with headings. Headings provide a visual structure to a document. Think about how you use a printed newspaper. If anybody still happens to use a newspaper, a printed newspaper, you look at the headings first, figure out what you want to read, and then you read it. Heading styles within Microsoft Word provides an accessible structure to that document. So instead of using heading attributes, now heading attributes is when you go to the home ribbon, and you click on home, and you go to the font box where you can change the font type. You know, this one, this graphic shows it's Arial 12 point and bold. You can also change the color of font. Is it underlined? Is it italics? Is it cross through? So forth. These are attributes. This is what people typically use to set up their headings in a document. However, it doesn't create true headings within that document. They are not accessible headings at all. So instead, use the heading styles. If you go to the home ribbon, and there is a section called styles. Depending on how large your monitor is, you may see anywhere from 3 to 5 styles shown. Over on the right-hand side, there's a drop-down menu that you can click to expand and see all the styles that are available. These are predetermined styles. In other words, they have predetermined attributes already set for a heading 1, for a heading 2, for a heading 3, and for a heading 4, and so on. So even though these are predefined, you may not like the definitions that are provided. Well, that's okay, because you can show your own style by simply modifying those headings, the styles that have been predefined. And all you do is you simply right-click on whichever heading style that you want to change, click Modify, and a screen will open up where you can actually determine what font you want to use, what do you want it bold, what size of font do you want it centered, do you want it left justified, do you want it right justified? All of those things you can determine. So you can set up your own set of styles. This is something that in our conversion lab, which is where we actually convert textbooks into accessible formats for students with print-related disabilities, we have a preset set of styles, a predetermined set of styles that we have established that are consistent across everything that we produce. So it doesn't matter who works on it, it's going to have the same styles throughout all of our content that we convert. So there are some major benefits to using heading styles that really, some relate to accessibility and some don't. For screen reader users, using heading styles allows them to navigate the document. All they have to do is pull up a list to access the list of headings, and they can quickly navigate that document. If you have a long document and you've used heading styles, you can very quickly, with just a couple of clicks, set up a table of contents for your document. Also, if you decide, maybe you've set up, all of the heading ones are Arial 20 point, and you've set all of your heading 2s, maybe Arial 16 point, it's all left aligned, it's bold. Maybe you decided, you want your heading 2s to be Arial 14 point, and you want it center line aligned, and you want it italics. Well, all you have to do is go in and modify it. And when you do, it will change every heading 2 in your document. So you don't have to manually go through and make all those changes. It just does it for you. So those are some of the major benefits of using heading styles. Now, one of the things that when we are developing documents, oftentimes we're including images, okay? So for someone who uses a screen reader, an image doesn't do a whole lot of good if there's no explanation that goes along with it, and this is called alt text. So a screen reader simply reads it as graphic. Well, then what's the point of including it if you don't want everybody to be able to know what that graphic is about? So you can easily change it and add that description to the graphic, and you want to make it pretty concise to describe the graphic. You don't need to include image of or graphic of, because the screen reader is going to announce that it's a graphic. So to do that, to add the alt text from the graphic, you're going to select the graphic simply by clicking on it and right click, and then on the menu that pops up, just click on edit alt text. Now, another way to get to that is to use the ribbon. So on the ribbon, you're simply going to click on picture format, and then you can click on alt text. And when you do either one of these, you'll get a box that will pop up. The alt text window will be opened up. Now, I will say this, do not rely on the auto-generated description. It seems like 90% of the graphics I use, it says a picture of a cell phone when it has nothing to do with a picture of a cell phone. This one was, it was actually a picture of 2 dogs that were playing on my porch, and it says the automatic generated description was a dog standing next to a fence. No. So make sure that you review that. Put in, 1 or 2 sentences is all you need to put in. It shouldn't be long. Now, if you have a graphic that you are simply putting in there as decorative, ornamental, there's no meaning associated with it, you can easily set that as marked as decorative, and then the screen reader will ignore it. So now that you've set up your styles, which is very important, and your graphics are also accessible, you want to make sure that if you're going to save that document out as a PDF, you want to make sure that you're going to retain that accessibility. So when you do, use the save as PDF, in this case, save as Adobe PDF. Don't use print and then print to the PDF, because when you do that, it wipes out all of the coding that you have just put in to make it accessible. And now I'm going to go on to another Microsoft product, and that's PowerPoints. And I apologize, I've got 2 slides out of order. I just realized it. When you are setting up PowerPoints, it's very important to use the pre-made slide layouts. Avoid free templates that don't have pre-made layouts, because if you have to add a text box to a PowerPoint, you just made an inaccessible slide. So choose the layout that will fit best your content. Now, I will tell you this, I have cheated on this. I have used, for example, this one, the one that is a comparison, and it has a header, and then it has 2 subheading sections, and then it has 2 content sections. I had a slide that I needed 5 sections, or maybe it was 4. So I cheated and I used this slide or layout, but you can rearrange it and you can redefine those heading sizes and the heading styles in this. Unlike Word, PowerPoint does not have predefined heading styles. So you can make those changes on the slide. It's not a big deal. It's very easy to do. And there's my section header, sorry. So one of the things that you can do to make sure that the content on your slide is accessible is to use Outline View. Once you've set up your slides, go back through and check Outline View. You do this by going to View. So up where it says File, Home, Insert, etc. Click on View and then select the Outline View. And what it will do is on the side, it will open up where you normally see the little thumbnails of your PowerPoint slides. It will actually open up an outline view of what is on your slides. And if you added a text box, that information will not appear in that outline view. So this is an example. This first sentence that has the arrow in front of it says this text box is part of the template layout. The next one says this text box was added and the contents does not appear in the outline view. So a screen reader cannot read it, nor will the content be included if it's exported to Word or some other file format. And this little screenshot shows you what the outline view looks like. You can see that it was slide 16, PowerPoint added text box is the title. Okay, yep, that's on there. It says this text box is part of the template layout. Yep. And sure enough, the box that says this text box was added, that information is not in the outline view. So this slide would not be an accessible slide. So let's talk about PDFs just real quick. Portable document format. It is a format that is extremely popular because it basically saves a document in a format that we wanted it to look like. But PDFs are not all created equal. Some of them are text-based, which means that you can select the text by simply holding your mouse and scrolling over the text. Sometimes it's called searchable PDF. You can use a text select tool to tell if there's text. The other type is a graphical PDF. In other words, it's a picture of a page. That's all it is. This is usually the result of a scanned document, and the text can't be selected. If you try to select the text in a graphic-based PDF, it's just going to select the whole page. So a text-based PDF is created when an accessible Word document or PowerPoint is saved as PDF. And it's very handy because it has lots of really good usability features, such as it's searchable, it's navigable. The user can copy and paste content to use as a resource. It can be accessible for someone using assistive technology, such as screen readers and text-to-speech applications. Now, you'll notice I say it can be accessible. It may not be accessible. When it comes to PDFs, text-based does not mean it is a completely accessible document. Now, if you have a fairly simple Word document or PowerPoint and you use Save as PDF, it will probably convert pretty well. However, if you have a complex document, maybe you've got a lot of tables, maybe you've got a lot of graphics, maybe you've got various layouts like multiple columns. A complex document is going to have an accessibility check run on it. And honestly, it's probably going to need remediation. If you have the professional version of Adobe Acrobat, there is an accessibility check feature built into it. But honestly, sometimes it's better just to provide the original accessible document if you have a complex document, because it can take a lot of time to make a PDF truly accessible. And I've had some that there was just no really good way to make them truly accessible. So think about that as you are laying out your documents. Do you want it to be complex, or can you lay it out more simply so that you can save those accessible features that you've built into your document? So when it comes to all digital communications, and this is really all digital print communications, there's some commonalities across these. First, add alt text to your images. That's whether it is a Word document, a PowerPoint, or in a PDF. You should have alt text in your images. Yes, you can add alt text in a PDF, especially if you have the full version of Adobe Acrobat, the professional version. You can make such changes. Use unique headings. You'll notice that on this slide, it says in all digital print communication 1. I have multiple slides that have this same title, so to make them unique, I've added a number. If you only have 2 of them, you could simply use in all digital print communication, and the next one have all digital print communication continued. Your font faces. When it comes to digital print, it's best to use sans serif fonts. In other words, the fonts that don't have all the little tails and tags stuck on them. In print media, in hard copy print media, it was determined many years ago that Times New Roman was the easiest font to read. Excuse me. However, when it comes to digital media, that is not the case. Serif fonts, sans serif fonts are actually easier to read. And I encourage you to use those that have a little bit heavier substance to the structure. And they're not necessarily heavy lines, but like Arial. I used Arial in my presentation. Tahoma is another one. Verdana is very popular. Avoid those that have a light weighted line like Calibri Light, which is shown on my slide. It is lighter. It takes a little bit more for your eyes to actually focus on it and read on it if there's a lot to it. One thing to be careful of is don't use color only to convey emphasis. If somebody's colorblind, they may miss that color change. Use other attributes in that case, such as underline, don't use underline. Use bold or use italics. And I'll show you why we don't want to use underline here shortly. In fact, the next slide. Use underlines only if you have a hyperlink, because in the digital realm, that is what indicates a hyperlink, is an underlined text. Use meaningful text when you're including links. So instead of things like read more or click here, use descriptive links like more about tools for accessibility or styles in MS Word. Here's a couple of examples of here's an example of what not to do. This actually flipped from Reddit or something. You'll notice here that there's a title, and I've cut off the titles just to zoom in on the links, but it's read more, read more, read more. Well, if somebody is using a screen reader, that's what they're going to hear is read more, read more, read more. Doesn't give them any idea of where they're wanting to go. So instead, you can use the term read more. This is an example I found that read more appears on the page. So visually, as you're reading through the page, you see read more, and then you see the link. In this case, the link is Amazon Prime, 21 benefits should be every member gets And read more isn't even part of the link. So visually, they've included it on the page, but it's not included as part of the link, which I think is a really smart strategy. Whenever you're using establishing your backgrounds, make sure that there's a really good contrast between the text and the background. A good choice is either a black or dark blue text on a light gray or white background, or the opposite where it's light text, white or light gray on a black or dark blue background. I think mine is kind of a purpley blue today. You'll notice that in my background, in the center part where all the text appears, there are no graphics. That's another thing, is don't use a background that has graphics and put text over it. It makes it extremely difficult to read. And if somebody has to look at it repetitively, it becomes more and more tedious and can really contribute to eye strain. If you're unsure about the color contrast, there are many checkers out there. Sorry, I misspelled checker. Color contrast analyzers, and at the end of my PowerPoint is a list of them. So with your backgrounds and your text, make sure that they do have good contrast. Unfortunately, one of the things today, one of the most common web designs today, it seems to be a white or very light gray background with a gray text on it. For anybody who has any type of vision difficulties, that can be extremely fatiguing and very difficult to use. So make sure that there's contrast. Now I'm going to go to digital media, and it really should be accessible videos. Now, when we talk about videos, we're not just talking about the video itself, but first you have to think about, is the player accessible? The controls have to be accessible, because you can have a great video with captions and everything built into it. It's great. But if a user can't even start the video because the controls aren't accessible, then all of that work is gone to naught. So controls have to be accessible, whether it's through keyboard navigation instead of using a mouse, or whether it's, which is, for a screen reader user, they have to be able to navigate to that. The spoken words, anything that is verbalized in that video needs to have captions, and hopefully also a transcript is also provided so that somebody could go back and read through it if they needed to. Especially if you are providing a training video of any type, a transcript can be very helpful after the fact. Descriptions of visual content. If you have a video that is strictly visual and it doesn't have any audio to it, you need to have what is called audio descriptions or video descriptions. You'll see these terms used interchangeably. All it means is that whatever is in the visual realm of that video is described so that somebody can hear it. So I had to throw in some bad caption examples just for grins and giggles today. So we have here two young men who are wearing really ugly Christmas sweaters. And the caption is, "Read off the Rent Those Reindeer," which I'm pretty sure is not what they were singing. The next one is really good. "This is Spock from Star Trek, and he's sobbing mathematically." Now, if anybody can achieve that, it would be Spock, right? And last we have SpongeBob SquarePants, and he says, "What, we're going to do business with ants." What? And what's really sad about this is many parents turn on the captions for their children because it does help them learn English, especially if they are not a native English user, native English speaker. Captions can be very beneficial to learning the language, but if they're not correct, it's not helpful at all. So now I want to turn our focus to the World Wide Web, or at least your corner of it. I know you don't control the whole web, so let's just talk about your corner of it. And honestly, I have one slide, and the reason is this topic alone can be a multi-day workshop, okay? Because there's so many areas that have to be attended to when it's accessibility, when it comes to accessibility. But you'll notice some of these items listed are very familiar. Your information posted, so your page content. The text has to have proper HTML coding, but your graphics also have to have alt text. And when it comes to the web, they're called alt tags. If you're posting additional documents, they need to be accessible documents, right? Word documents, PDFs, PowerPoints. If you have digital media, they need to be accessible with captions and audio/video descriptions. Another thing is if you have a form that you're collecting information, it has to be properly coded and have the correct navigation order. If it's not coded properly, then someone using a screen reader is not going to have any idea of what the fields are that they need to complete. And if it's not in the proper navigation order, that can throw any user off trying to figure out where they're at. When it comes to web accessibility, there are web content accessibility guidelines. There are 4 main principles, and those spell out POUR, that's perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. And I've given you a link to the standard guidelines. And at the end of the PowerPoint are more information on links to web accessibility. This truly is simply the tip of the iceberg. And I've gone through this really quick. I have one more area I want to talk about just very briefly, and that's communication and video platforms. And I use communication video platforms as a slash because it might be video, but we might be using them audio only. Currently, the leading industry standards are Zoom and Microsoft Teams. Google has one. I'm not familiar with it. I will tell you that Google products in general have quite a few glitches when it comes to accessibility. Zoom and Microsoft Teams have both been pretty good at their accessibility. They're not perfect. There isn't one out there that is. However, what we have seen since the COVID pandemic is that both of these entities have put a lot of resources into making fast changes and upgrades to improve their products, and that includes the accessibility of those products. They're always working to improve them all the time anyway, but we've seen it much, much quicker. Microsoft Teams has done a huge jump in what they had available in February and the product that they have out now. Auto captioning, as you've seen with the auto captioning of today's presentation, it's not perfect. Probably typically around 80 to 85% correct. One of the things is if you have if you've recorded a video and you've saved it, the auto captions need to be reviewed. The text and the punctuation needs to be corrected. If you had to read the transcript of today's presentation, it would probably be really confusing in spots because there's absolutely no punctuation. That is one of the problems with YouTube videos is the majority of YouTube videos don't have punctuation. If in doubt, turn off your sound and try to follow a video with just the captions on. That will tell you very quickly. I will also tell you that with Zoom, you may or may not have the option to have auto captioning. It depends on the contract, your type of Zoom that you have, and the contract, like with the U of A, it now has a contract with Zoom. So you may or may not have the captioning. There's Zoom webinar, and then there's Zoom meeting. So that's one of the things about the auto captioning. Making sure that they are compatible with a third-party captioning service. So that if you have a captioning vendor, they can basically plug into, they can plug into Zoom, they can plug into Teams. Both of these have pretty good screen reading capability, compatibility, not 100%. They do have pretty decent keyboard navigation. The option to pin a participant on the video can be very beneficial. And the availability for a user to change the accessibility settings, like maybe somebody wants to change the size of the captions, or maybe they want to change the color of the caption background and the color of the captions. Those type of accessibility features can be really important to the user. My last couple of slides are all related to resources. This slide is some general resources and then web accessibility resources. The Explore Access website has great information about creating accessible documents and social media accessibility. DoIT, which is Disabilities, Opportunities, Internetworking, and Technology. DoIT has been around for a very long time. They are grant funded, and although they are primarily focused oh, excuse me. As you all can tell, I'm battling a cold. Excuse me. DoIT has been around for a very long time, and although they are primarily focused on higher education, they still have a lot of really usable material out there. NCAM, which is the National Center for Accessible Media. If you want to know about more information about accessible media, NCAM is the leader and the go-to source to find out about how do you add audio descriptions, how do you do good audio descriptions, what are the standards for setting up captions. WebAIM, which is Web Accessibility in Mind, is another major player if you want to learn about accessibility. They've got everything from the ground up, and they've been around since I want to say 2001, 2002, I think. They know their stuff and they have great resources. And then if you want to know more about web accessibility, there's the W3C, which is the World Wide Web Consortium. In that, there is the WAI, which is Web Accessibility Initiative. And then there's the WCAG standards, which is Web Content Accessibility Guidelines Overview. You'll hear WCAG 2.0 or WCAG, do you like how it captioned that? WCAG 2.1. Those are the standards, and have so that if somebody is setting up a website, they can use those standards to check their accessibility. And I did promise that I would provide you with some color contrast analyzers. So here's a list of them. There are many on here. The contrast checker from ACAR Communications. There's another tester from Joe Dolson. There are some color contrast analyzer apps from the Paciello group. Nothing Magical has a contrast app for iOS and macOS. And WebAIM also has a contrast checker. So if you want to know, are your colors, do you have good contrast, you can check those in any one of these. And I'm providing my contact information. I want you to feel free to contact me if you have any questions, want more information, whatever. Please just shoot me an email. Phone right now, you can call. We are currently running our office on a skeleton crew. Most days there's one or two people in the office, and that's about it. Probably email is the easiest route to go, but feel free either way, whatever works for you. I want to be a resource, so if you have questions, please feel free to contact me at any time. Do we have any questions?
There aren't any in the chat, but people are welcome to open their mics and ask a question if they have one.
No questions out there? Wow.
No questions as of yet, but I can tell you just listening to your presentation today that I'm feeling a little overwhelmed, like, wow, I am missing the mark on
But
so much.
the thing is these are little changes that you can make in your daily, whatever you're doing. You open up a Word doc, start using styles instead of going to that attribute section. Go to the styles and like I said, show your own style. Change those styles to what you want because you really can do that. It's very easy to do that. I know that we had a doctoral student who was a graduate assistant in our office, and between Microsoft OneNote and Microsoft Word, that's how she wrote her dissertation. Because of the features that are built into those, she was able to use those to collect her research and write her actual dissertation.
This PowerPoint will be available to everybody. Robin, you're going to put in a website or something? Because there's a lot of things to learn. In a short time, it's very difficult to ask any intelligent question at this time.
That's very true. So feel free to digest it. I am going to provide my slides to UA Current so that she can disseminate them to everybody. I do apologize. Sure. Normally I would have sent them early. I've been sick all weekend, so I didn't get them done. Sure. But those will be disseminated to everybody. And I do want you to feel free to contact me.
Thank you, Heidi. Yes, we will share the PowerPoint once received with everyone. Let's say for those in different states, can you tell us, like, for resources, if people have questions, should they continue to reach out to you? Are there other resources in their states that people can be looking for that can help them with accessible documents?
The best route to go would be the web, honestly and truthfully. WebAIM, some of those that I listed there at the end are really good resources. The Explore Access, that's an excellent website because both of those have everything from information for a novice to somebody who's more experienced. The Explore Access website has it described very easily. It's easy to understand. So I think using some of those websites and searching the web for things like that are going to be probably the most helpful. You feel free to reach out to me. I can shoot you back an email fairly quickly. We do have they used to be called DibTags. And I have gone totally blank. Every region has one. Probably you all could tell me what it stands for. Our region is the Dallas region. And I've gone totally blank, and I apologize.
We'll look it up. That's okay.
Of course, there's still the JAN network, Job Access Network. Mm-hmm. So there are lots of different resources out there. And I do apologize. I just went totally blank on things to be called the DibTags.
One of the questions that I have for you is, you talk about PowerPoints being accessible and limiting the use of graphics, backgrounds, and most of us, for me, I'm always wanting to do a presentation that catches your eye, that it's pretty, that engages people, and that it really sounds like we need to avoid those things to really kind of make our presentations more accessible.
Well, as I mentioned on my slides, I've got graphics on the sides. So you can still have graphics, you can still have color. Mm-hmm. It can still be in there. But make sure that the central portion is easy to read because it can contribute to eye strain. For somebody who has a visual processing disability, having a graphic behind it can be very disconcerting. For somebody, who has dyslexia, putting a graphic behind it can really throw them off. So it's okay to have graphics. It's okay to have color.
Mhm.
Just be mindful of where you're putting that information.
Okay. Any other thank you. Any other questions, comments from participants? It's a lot of great information. We will share the PowerPoint with everyone. So thank you, Heidi, for sharing today and pushing through in spite of your cold. We really appreciate you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. ADA National Network with regional offices. I think Teresa has put that in the chat box.
That's a good resource, yes.
Absolutely. Just final thoughts today. We will kick off tomorrow at 2 p.m. again. Our sessions tomorrow will be on communications. Dr. John Sasson with Langston University and Ashley Johnson Cross with Big Consulting will both be speaking on that topic. So we're looking forward to that. Please join us at 2 p.m. Central Time for that. And then on Thursday, we'll be looking again at sustainability with a discussion on social media and how to harness that great resource to reach our hard to reach populations. And then also engaging in a discussion about sustainability, reviewing the videos that you've sent in, and just having a discussion that John Walsh will lead about what our efforts will look like to keep this good work going. Any final thoughts before we close out today? This has been a great day of training. Thank you, Heidi. Thank you, John Connolly, for facilitating our first session and the presenters who are on that panel. Good information today, especially in this virtual environment where we are, where we're going. It's been a great day of learning. So we're looking forward to tomorrow, and this concludes our training for today for our Virtual Leadership Academy 2.0. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.